I love you so much. I'm so happy.
Who is he talking to?
Your knurling is so perfect.
What are you doing? Wait, why is the trap bar in our bed?
Nothing. You know I love trap bar deadlifts, and we're taking our relationship to the next level.
I thought you liked barbell deadlifts.
Well, she's here too. We can all exist in the same world and use each other.
Okay, but seriously, get both barbells out of our bed. That's disgusting.
What is going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about 7 different trap bar deadlift variations. Everything is timestamped down below. Check them out. If you're interested in anything specific, let's dive in.
So the first variation is the high handle trap bar deadlift. This is probably the most commonly used variation in this video, and we're going to get a lot of benefit here because we can really overload this trap bar deadlift variation, and we're going to get some benefit for the quads and the glutes. Since we're shortening the range of motion, generally this will be a variation that I'll program for higher volume, especially with heavier loads, because it's going to be less taxing neurally than a full range of motion deadlift or even a low handle setup deadlift. Now, let's say you want to bias your quads a little bit more with this variation. Feel free to use weightlifting shoes. They can be a fantastic tool to allow those knees to track a bit more and really bias the quads with this movement. The second variation is the low handle trap bar deadlift. So with the low handle trap bar deadlift, be very conscious of your anatomy and how you're setting up for this movement, because if you're like a taller individual, for example, this movement may not feel fully comfortable for you. We're going to get a lot of quads with this movement because we're going to have a lot more knee tracking in it, and we're going to get a nice exposure to what it almost feels like to be in a bottom position of the squat, especially through this concentric movement pattern. So this can be a really awesome tool for anybody really focusing on building up the quads and glutes with a vertical pulling variation. And similarly to the variation before, if you want to bias your quads a bit more with this exercise, focus on allowing those knees to track and lengthening the quad. It's going to produce better stress on the quads and create a better means of training them. And you can use weightlifting shoes to do this. Sometimes I will use weightlifting shoes for this variation when I'm really focusing on really just drilling down the quads with this exercise, and your quads are going to be blown up if you hit these with a bit higher volume and you really nail your form with them. The third variation is the stiff leg trap bar deadlift. And this has honestly been a replacement to my barbell stiff leg deadlifts, because with the hand positioning of the trap bar, we can get a ton of benefit with our setup here, especially with raising our hips up and really focusing on the posterior muscles. So as opposed to using our high handle variation, we're not going to have as much knee tracking here in the stiff leg variation. So it's going to be a little bit different with how we're cueing it. And I want you to focus on keeping a similar hip position that you would use in your barbell deadlift in a more conventional style. Now, another variation that is amazing and has completely replaced my barbell training for the most part, unless I'm going for a specific barbell RDL benefit, is the trap bar RDL. So with the hand positioning of this movement, I think it actually allows us to hinge a bit better because we don't have to worry about keeping that bar close or having it clear the knees by any means, especially if we have adequate range of motion and we're super flexible. So we can really fully focus on just the hinging position with this exercise. What I would say is when you're performing these, 2 things to think about is number 1, your torso position in regard to your pelvis position. So we want to keep a stacked rib cage position. We do not want to be performing those RDLs with that flared up chest position. I have talked about this in countless RDL videos on my channel. Check those out if you're more interested in how to avoid this and what not to do with your sequencing there. And then also what I want you to focus on is when you are hinging backwards, I want you to only go through an active range of motion that you possess. So what does that mean? I'm using the low handle setup here to show you that you can get a bit more range if you have adequate range of motion to begin with the high handle. But active range basically means that we're working within a range that isn't compromising our hinging mechanics. So I think far too often people think more is more with RDLs. So then they end up reaching at the bottom and they end up losing out on some of that tension we can actually create and maintain in the hamstrings and glutes. So again, work through an active range that works for your needs. Mid-Shin pause trap bar deadlifts are another fantastic tool for any lifter who's having trouble breaking the floor with their deadlift. I'll actually use this variation over barbell pause deadlifts for beginners and intermediates because with the barbell variation, we have to focus really heavily on clearing the knees and we can't necessarily load them as heavily. This gives beginners a bit of a better opportunity to load a bit heavier while focusing on maintaining a nice tight positioning with the knees and hips rising simultaneously simultaneously. So obviously it's not a barbell deadlift, but we can get some carryover there to our barbell deadlift with this variation. Another awesome variation that's a bit more advanced in nature is this trap bar RDL with a band around the waist. You could perform this with really any RDL variation, but why I like them with the trap bar is, once again, with the hand positioning, we could really focus on what we're doing with our hinge. And number two, we can load these a bit heavier than we can with dumbbells, because obviously a trap bar can be loaded a bit heavier. So with these, what I would say is focus on keeping the band around hip height when you are going through the eccentric to concentric movement pattern. So as you can see, the band is pretty parallel with to the ground, and you really get a lot of glute benefit here by tucking in the glutes and really focusing on driving them forward. Final variation is the trap bar high pull. So this variation is fantastic because it's a bit easier to conceptualize and learn when learning how to vertically pull into a loaded triple extension position for beginners and newer athletes. So I would use these a lot on Long Island when I was working with younger hockey players, because with the hand positioning, we don't have to worry about clearing the knees with the barbell high pull, and they're just a bit easier to learn, and we still get a lot of that great benefit when it comes to power production with this variation. All right, guys, that wraps up this video discussing different trap bar deadlift variations. The trap bar can be such a dynamic tool if you use it with purpose and intent in your program. This was 7 exercises that were just literally variations of a trap bar deadlift. This wasn't even counting carries, holds, presses, etc. So if you have any questions on any of these variations, please hit me in the comments below. And if you need help like programming them or figuring out where they fit in for your goals, hit me. I will help wherever I can. Obviously, I'm going to need some context, so please just lay out a little bit of background there so I know exactly what we're working with. But as always, guys, I hope you like this one. I plan to make more videos like this, so if you like the format, let me know. And as always, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I will see you in the next one.